Good afternoon. We're going to have an open public hearing concerning the New York State Community Development Block Grant CDBG Award number 1144ME978-21 Micro Enterprise Grant Program. If there's anyone that would like to speak on behalf of the open public hearing, please approach the microphone. We're going to wait a minute or so if anyone would like to speak to this topic.
Hello, everyone. In lieu of anyone else jumping up, I'm Jennifer Tavares. I live in Lansing, and I'm the president of the Tompkins Chamber and Chamber Foundation. And so we partnered on this grant and this project together. I just wanted to express gratitude to the county for this partnership. I think we did some really good work together. It's evidenced by a number of microenterprises that have been funded or have expanded their businesses in that time. I have shared information in the past, but I did bring some more highlights and numbers in case anyone from the public was interested or if anyone from the legislature or the county staff wanted to see that information. So grateful for the partnership, and who knows, maybe we'll give this another go sometime in the future, but thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. And it does not look like anyone else is here to speak on behalf of the public hearing, so I am going to close the public hearing. Today is Tuesday, December 19th. It is 5:32. Welcome to the Tompkins County Legislature. If you'll please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could have a roll call of members, please.
Ann Klein.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Here.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Pillar.
Here.
Cliff.
Here.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Susan Curry.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Rich John.
Here.
Shauna Black.
Here.
14 members present.
Thank you. This afternoon, we are going to have one proclamation. I know on our agenda it has that we have noted for two. There will be a Lansing Bobcat Volleyball Day proclamation that's going to be moved to our January 16th meeting. For our proclamation this evening, I would ask Dan Klein to read that, and it's in recognition of Frank Proto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whereas Frank Proto was among a group of visionaries who began working on unified public transportation for Tompkins County 35 years ago, and whereas Frank Proto remained a representative for the county's interests in public transportation that entire time, and whereas Frank Proto was a key player before and during the unification of Tompkins County's, the City of Ithaca's, and Cornell University's separate transportation services into TCAT, Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit. And whereas Frank Proto was also a key player before and during the construction of the Ithaca-Tompkins Transit Center building at 737 Willow Avenue, Ithaca, New York, which opened in 1992. And whereas Frank Proto has served on the TCAT Board of Directors for its entire existence, including 3 terms as board chair, now therefore be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature honors and thanks Frank Proto for his many decades of unparalleled public service promoting public transportation.
Well, you know, if you know me, you know I'm not speechless. But thank you very much. This is quite a recognition, and I appreciate it. I can't believe that it goes back all those years, and you have to indulge me for a few minutes. When Barbara Blanchard, who used to sit right where Ann is sitting, when Barbara Blanchard asked me to join the operations committee with Bill Gray, Bill Wendt, and Bill Mobbs, and Barbara was the fourth B, we had no idea what we were getting into, but we did. It was a struggle at the beginning because trying to bring the three entities together, and those of you, I know Deborah and I have had experience, and so has Dan, negotiating MOUs with Cornell. Those of you that have had any experience negotiating with the university know it could be a challenge. But bringing the city, the county, and Cornell together was quite an operation. But nobody does this by themselves. But I had the privilege of working with Hank DeLay, Bill Gray, Bill Mobbs, Frank Ligori, Barbara Lifton. We got the money for the Green Street station through Maurice Hinchy. That was quite a privilege to work with him. And Alphonse D'Amato, I saw that picture up there, as a matter of fact. When I had dark hair in those days, but Alphonse D'Amato got us the money for the transit facility itself. And we've had a wonderful time. We've been through now with Scott leaving, we've been through 3 GMs and a lot of challenges, as some of you will acknowledge, certainly the last couple of years. But it's been a bus ride, and the community appreciates it a lot, and we can't do without it. So my wish is that, and I know it's yours too, that you'll keep this going because it's very important to the community. And the county brought to the table, with Dwight's help, I know Dwight gave us fits at times, but we won't get into that. But Dwight's heart was in the right place, and he helped us develop the transit system that we have. And we should all be thankful for that. But please don't forget, the county's contribution to TCAT was rural transit. And some of us, when I used to sit there, some of us represented the rural areas of the county, we thought, very well. So please don't forget the rural counties. And Lisa, if you still live in Danby, and I think you do, Dwight and I brought the first transit van to Danby together when we instituted transit there. I'm sorry to go on and on. You don't need to hear me. You have a lot on your agenda tonight, as usual. But thank you. Appreciate this very much. Shauna, good luck with TCAT. Deborah, good luck. And where are you? There you are. Good luck with the new challenge. We'll get together after the first of the year. But I appreciate this very much. Have a very nice holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and however you choose to celebrate it. Stay healthy. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank Proto. You are truly an inspiration and a public servant, so we appreciate you. Next, I would like to announce that we will have an executive session this evening in regards to 5 different issues. First one is discussions regarding proposed, pending, or current litigation. Second, collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. Third, the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporations or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. The last one, the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. And we have 2 matters that deal with that. Next, we are going to move to the privilege of the floor for our public. If you are here and would like to speak on privilege of the floor for our public, please make sure to fill out one of the blue sheets that's located at the back table. I'm just going to read a few of our rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. Number 1, I agree to a 3-minute time limit. Number 2, I agree not to raise my voice. Number 3, I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. Number 4, I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. Number 5, after 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. And number 6, if I agree, if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. Our first speaker this evening is James Beaumont.
Hello, my name is James Beaumont. I am the co-chair of the Developmental Disability Subcommittee for Tompkins County, and I'm also the Assistant Director of Day Services at Unity House. I'm here to make sure that everyone is aware of a crisis happening in regards to residential options for people with developmental disabilities in the area. There have been a total of 8 houses that have suspended services in just Tompkins County alone, which has had an impact on over 50 individuals with disabilities. The number one reason for these closures is staffing. It's been extremely difficult to recruit and retain staff in the field, especially when there are so many higher paying jobs out there. Also with the cost of living higher in the area, but also with the state giving only a 4% cost of living adjustment to agencies like Unity House and Racker, it has been very difficult to try to get people to work in the human services field and to support people with developmental disabilities. As a result of there being fewer residential options, there have been more people looking for day services to help fill people's time during the day. And I have talked to a lot of parents who have stated if we can't try to help support them to get 8 hours of support for their loved ones during the day, they're going to have to quit their jobs and leave the workforce. So there continues to be situations where people aren't able to find housing, and that means that they are then looking at 2 options. Continue to live at home with mom and dad. Could take years to find residential placements. People are struggling behaviorally. There's long wait lists for the few crisis services that are available to people in the area. Or their second option is to move their loved one out of the area. We're having more and more people that are trying to find housing in other communities, and when people have to move, they lose their natural supports, they lose their friends, they lose any connection that they had in this area, and these are people who have grown up in Tompkins County that are being forced to move to other places. So what I'm also here to do is advocate for a solution. So out of those 8 residential houses that are sitting empty throughout Tompkins County, I'd like to advocate for the county to look and try to see what they can do to help work with the state on finding asylum seekers with job permits to be able to come to work in the area and live in those programs. I know housing is a huge issue when trying to work with people that are refugees and asylum seekers, but if we could try to work on a solution to be able to bring those people to the area, have them live in those empty, vacant houses, and be able to work in the field to try to help support the few people that are still working in the field, provide relief, and make sure that people have more options of living in the community that they grew up in. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Doug Levine.
Good evening, everyone. Happy holidays. My name is Doug Levine. I've served as the executive director of the State Theater for the past 15 years, and I've also been on the Strategic Tourism Planning Board for the last 6, and I'm currently the vice chair of that committee. And I'm just here to speak in favor of and support of the new 5-year contract with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I know that's far down on the agenda today, but I just want to say how much of an importance that is to my organization and also the Strategic Tourism Planning Board as well. This past weekend, we had the Nutcracker. Did anyone attend? I don't know if anyone out there attended, but we had over 2,500 people in 4 days attend shows at the State Theater this past weekend. Overall, for the year of 2023, we've had over 40,000 people attend shows at the State Theater, and we do track by zip code the number of people that come from out of county, and it's close to 50% now people are coming from outside of Tompkins County, and a lot of that is due to our partnership with the CVB, marketing the State Theater to other people out of town, bringing them in. And often I also get on stage before the show, and I also often ask just for people to show me their hand, how many people came from outside of Tompkins County, and it's growing. It's pretty incredible. So coming up in 2024, during the Teacher Week, Ithaca Loves Teachers, we actually booked the Board Teachers Comedy Tour, and we are working in conjunction with the CVB, and we expect over 1,000 people to attend a show in February, and it's all due to that partnership. So it really, that partnership is great for us, but it's great for the entire county. People that are coming from out of town and spending their money here, staying in hotels, raising the room tax, et cetera. So I just want to say I fully support another 5-year contract. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doug. Next is Ruth Yarrow.
Good evening. I'm here as a member of the County Human Rights Commission. And today, from our liaison, Susan Curry, you should have received a resolution that we hope you will consider at your next meeting. I just want to add a little geography to this. I've been trying to wrap my mind around what's happening in Gaza. Imagine a rectangle going from Ithaca to Aurora to 6.5 miles east, back down to Etna, and back to Ithaca. That's the size of the Gaza Strip. And in that place are 2.3 million people. And an equivalent of 2/3 of the population of Ithaca has been killed, approaching half of them children, and more in the rubble. I hope you will read our resolution carefully and think about what the responsibility is of our county that sends our tax dollars to support the munitions is to this issue. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ruth. I do want to confirm that we have received the resolution that was sent to us from the Office of, or the Human Rights Commission. Thank you for your work on that. Next, we have privilege of the floor for municipal officials. Do we have anyone here from our municipalities? Dominic, no one on Zoom? Okay, let's open it up to legislator privilege of the floor. Randy Brown and then Lee Shurtleff.
Yes, on Saturday, I attended, as well as Ann Corman attended, the Enfield Volunteer Fire Company's annual banquet, and it was a great event. It was actually catered by the Falls Tavern. They did a great job, I thought. And it was, they did a presentation of all the trainings and all the various people involved in the fire department. And they chose the top 10 people, just to give an example, that did training, and the number 10 person had 40 hours of training, and the top person had 240 hours of training, so 6 weeks of training. And a lot of that training has to do with, for example, if you have a new pump truck, you have to go training to drive that truck, otherwise you can't drive it. And they put in place numerous positions. There elections there and put people in place. But it's a really nice fire department, and a lot of strong volunteers, a strong EMS group getting trained there. And just wanted to mention that. I thought it was quite impressive. So.
Thank you, Randy. Lee Shirtliff, Amanda Champion, and Ann Corman.
Thank you, Shauna. Briefly, I want to tell you about my day. Started at 3 in the morning, and over the course of 14 hours, I interacted with 9 county employees in a professional sense. Started with a dispatcher, a dispatch supervisor, 2 different scenes in a professional sense with 2 sheriff's deputies, 2 investigators from the medical examiner's office, the medical examiner herself, vital records office and whole health, and ultimately Tompkins County Surrogates Court. Just think about that, nine people in the Tompkins County orbit in 14 hours. And I just want to say that every one of those interactions was cheerful, friendly, helpful, professional. And that's not the exception, that's the rule. And Lisa, I just want to have you convey to the workforce that as we wind this year down and move ahead, appreciation for all they do for the residents of Tompkins County. They make our life better here, and thanks to the respective departments. You know, it's unbelievable to have that level of cooperation from so many different areas over a period of time, and I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Next is Amanda Champion.
Thanks. I wrote something down tonight, so I would try to say what exactly I want to say. Today, Governor Hochul signed a bill to create a task force to look at New York's history of slavery and the racism and discrimination that has and continues to impact Black people. The task force will study and consider what reparations can be made by the state of New York. We don't know what they'll come back with or what financial restitution might look like, but I'm really glad the state is taking this first step. I believe it's important for us to remember that this country was built on the backs of slaves. I also believe it's important for us to admit that this land we sit on was stolen from the Native people who lived here before settlers came. It can be hard to acknowledge that the systems we have in place stem from these terrible parts of our history. It can be hard to accept that we white people have benefited from these things and that we continue to benefit from them. But I personally acknowledge these things, and I'm sorry for my complicity in them. I look forward to a time when reparations can be made and all people can begin to heal from these painful wounds. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. Ann Corman.
First, I want to just thank my colleague Amanda Champion for recognizing what the governor governor's initiative and for bringing up equity and reparation issues. But the reason I raised my hand was I wanted to thank also the Enfield Fire Company. Their volunteers, they estimate very conservatively that it's fully volunteer staff for their fire department, approximately $500,000 that saves the community. So I just wanted to put a shout out to them, and they are being more successful with young folks coming aboard, but they need more, and as all volunteer and paid departments do. So just want to put a shout out there, you know, to young folks and families as you're thinking about the new year, to look at connecting with your fire department, your EMS, or in some way in any community organization, because everybody could use more volunteers. So thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Next is Mike Sigler.
I want to tell you about my day too without the death, so thank you for that. No, I had a great day on Saturday, and the reason I'm telling you about this is because we started off at the Rutabaga Curl. It was really fun, and if you've never been to that, I would recommend it. And you know, it takes you down to the farmer's market, and it's very funny. There were even protesters, so PETA, People for the Protection of Rutabagas, so they were there. But from there, we went over to AME Zion. So they are celebrating their 190th birthday. And if you walk by that church now, There is a placard out front that tells you a little bit about it. And it was nice to see that many people kind of turn out. I saw JR there and Leslin, and it was just a nice event. Nice ribbon cutting over there. From there, then I went to the Commons and saw Robbie Dean. I've actually met Robbie Dean, so that was kind of exciting. So just a reminder to shop local. But then I was walking down our alley, not really down, more past, and I saw the artist who was doing our mural. And it was just, I got to sit down and kind of, well, not sit, stand, but talk to him about the mural and the progress. And it's nice to know that when, the weather is 50 degrees, he's out there painting, and it's coming along. It's pretty amazing to see something that large kind of get pulled together. So, yeah, I just wanted to tell you about my great day. So there you go.
Thanks, Mike. Next, Veronica Pillar.
Thank you. Mike, I'm so glad to know that you are making the most of what our beautiful city has to offer. I wish I had made it to the Rutabaga Curl. Unfortunately, I was in Lansing learning to play hockey with a bunch of other women and non-binary people. And yes, I'm pandering to our chair a little bit. I also wanted to thank the public commenters for each raising important issues that I guess one of them will come up later in the meeting, but the other two I look forward to engaging with and thinking about more. What I actually raised my hand for was to say that a week ago, I attended a screening of the documentary It's Basic, which is it was hosted by Liddy Barger from the Human Services Coalition and Mayor Laura Lewis at Cinemapolis. And it was about a bunch of guaranteed income pilot projects from an organization called Mayors for Guaranteed Income. We had one in Ithaca, which is why we got to have a screening of this documentary. It gave $450 a month for 12 months to, I don't remember how many people, but it was all people who were caregivers, otherwise unpaid caregivers of some sort. And it sounds like it was really helpful. But the documentary was really incredible. It showed a history of the idea of basic income from decades ago to the present. It showed examples of how it rolled out in various cities and a lot of people's personal stories of how it changed their life, even for the temporary part of the program. In a lot of cases, it allowed people to, I think as one of our commenters said, stay in the communities that they were instead of being forced to leave or to abandon something. I wish I could tell you all to go out and see it, but it's not just available online or everywhere to watch yet. I hear that might be coming in the future, or it might be coming back. But look out for it if you can watch It's Basic. And it was really, really striking how powerfully positive that guaranteed income was for people.
Thank you, Veronica. Anyone else like to speak on legislative privilege of the floor? Okay. I would like to just make a quick announcement that we're going to reorder some business this evening. We are going to move our unfinished business for the Chamber of Commerce resolution. We're going to move that right after we finish our consent agenda so that Peggy and Jennifer and Doug don't have to stay for our whole meeting. You're welcome to. I always invite people. We'll probably go till midnight this evening, so you're welcome to stay till that very late meeting, but you don't have to. Now I'm going to move on to my chair's report, and So good evening. Tonight is my last chair's report, and I want to give a sincere thank you to everyone in this room. Thank you to the 13 legislators who show up at committees, advisory boards, and legislature meetings ready to make a difference and represent your constituents. I appreciate your willingness to volunteer and to have hard conversations. I've also noticed something that is very rare amongst a group of political elected bodies: the value of compromise. I continue to be impressed at the way we navigate forward for the betterment of our community. Thank you to the clerks that keep our legislature on track and moving ahead. Katrina, you have been my ride or die, and I want to thank you for your support. I also want to thank our team and administration. Lisa has been an incredible administrator who presents honest and timely information so that we can make the best decisions. Norma and Bridget are always available and work hard to support our county goals and priorities. This year, we added Lori, our Director of Finance, who provides us with top-notch financial information and helps us to secure the fiscal success of our county. We have also added Charlene to our admin team to serve as our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer. Her expertise has helped spark conversations that will help us grow in the future. Thank you to Holly for stepping in and filling in as our county attorney. We are hopeful that 2024 will bring us a successful recruiting effort and we can fully staff your office. Merry Christmas. One person that has helped me on more than one occasion, and I can't sing his praises enough, is Dominic. Dominic helps me when I can't find the right words, and he's always prepared to help his colleagues at a minute's notice. Thank you, Dominic. I could go department by department and thank the hundreds of people who make Tompkins County great. Each one of you has a special place, and I hope you know how appreciated you are. This was another year full of many accomplishments across the entire organization. Thank you to my colleagues who have trusted me to be your leader over the past 2 years. This has been the ultimate honor of my life, and truly an experience I will never forget. I look forward to Lisa's year in review presentation in January, celebrating all of our department and their work. Sometimes it feels like there's so much going on in our community that it's hard to keep it all together. But I am grateful for our staff who are working in so many areas to take the lead and keep the legislature informed so that we can make the best decisions. I also want to acknowledge the hundreds of community members who have provided public comments to this legislature and county staff this year. Community members have provided valuable insights both here in chambers and in other forums like our strategic planning process. We also have many community members that volunteer their time to be part of our advisory boards. Their feedback is invaluable and an essential part of our decision making. I believe our county is better off when we hear from members of the public and weigh different options and lived experiences. I'm looking forward to 2024 with new energy and opportunities for Tompkins County, and I hope it will be a year where we don't shy away from challenges, no matter how big they are. I hope that we continue as being innovative and forward-thinking problem solvers. In closing, it has been my absolute pleasure to serve as your chair this year. I truly felt lucky to preside over these meetings, no matter how long they are. Yes, even this meeting. And to keep the work of the county moving forward. Thank you all and happy holidays. It was also the second meeting that I've cried at this year. Okay, let's see. Let's move on to our consent agenda. Oh. Oh, boy.
Topical present.
No. I'm about to get fired. Let's see here. Okay, we have some special presentations here. We're going to do our rapid medical response program. And I believe Mike and Joe are here to do a presentation for us. Thank you. Did I lose that page completely? Oh, here it is.
All right, so we were asked to come back and kind of give a overview of what we've discussed in the past and just kind of throw some numbers up for some reminders. So I don't know if you guys will remember this from the previous presentation, but this is a scatter plot of all of the EMS calls for service in 2022, broken down by the agencies, including Trumansburg Ambulance, Dryden Ambulance, Groton Ambulance, and Bangs Ambulance. We had the IT team take out all of the blue dots for Bangs Ambulance to really show where all of our county ambulances are sitting. So yellow is for Trumansburg. I apologize, the coloring is not the greatest. The black is for Groton Ambulance, and the gray dots are Dryden Ambulance. Each of our EMS calls are dispatched on a priority system. So an Omega call is a non-medical call. It's just somebody that's calling for some kind of a public assist, whether they need help up off the ground because they're not injured or help getting back into their house. That would be dispatched as an Omega call. That does not require medical personnel to respond. It just requires some sort of personnel. Alpha calls are our very basic calls: sick, injured, I've hurt my leg, I've stubbed my toe, that kind of thing. As we go up the chain, Bravo calls are generally somebody who's fallen, has some bleeding, a little bit more serious than the Alpha. Charlies, Deltas, and Echoes are what we call advanced life support calls. Charlies are for your chest pains, shortness of breaths. Deltas usually involve altered mental status, and Echoes are anytime there's ineffective or lack of breathing. So we pulled the numbers for 2023. This was year to date through the end of the summer. So year to date, at the end of the summer, we had 4 rescue agencies in our county that were unable to respond to over 25% of their calls for service. And those are just the calls that they're dispatched to. So when you look at, towards the right-hand side, when you look at the black boxes, this is not dispatched. Those agencies are not even dispatched those level of calls. So again, this is just, as an example, Brookendale missed 41% of their Delta and Echo calls. That does not include any Omega, Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie calls that were dispatched to their district. Between 2008 and 2022, we saw an increase in over 1,600 EMS calls in our county across all varying dispatch priorities. And in that same time, we saw an increase in the average response time. The national average response time for a fire rescue is 4 minutes. When you look at our numbers, we have some that are well above that 4-minute mark. When we proposed the Rapid Medical Response Program, we talked about strategically placing these, what would ultimately be known as a fly car, around the county. These 2 maps show a basic response time. The map on the left is a 15-mile radius, and the map on the right is about a 15-minute drive on county roads. So you can see that with those 3 vehicles, we would be able to cover the majority of Tompkins County. At our last presentation, we presented several cost-sharing models. First cost-sharing model that we presented was that it was a 50-50 split. The municipalities would split that equally, their 50% equally. Cost-sharing model number 2 is that the municipalities would pay per the rescue that they currently run. So the town of Caroline currently has 3 first response rescues, so they were included 3 times. Cost-sharing model number 3 was municipalities that do not have a transport agency. So that left out the towns of Dryden, Groton, Ulysses, and the city of Ithaca. Cost-sharing model number 4 would be the municipalities cover 25% of the cost and the county covers 75%. Model number 5 was that the county consumes 100% of the cost and the municipalities don't pitch in any. And cost-sharing model number 6 is a 2/3 split, with Towns that have an existing ambulance service pay $1 per resident per year, and towns without an existing ambulance would pay $3 per resident per year.
Mike Sigler?
When you were doing the average 4-minute response time, I mean, is that, I'm kind of curious how they account for that. I mean, is that all cities, all rural? I mean, 4 minutes seems quick to me, so.
So the 4-minute average response time is from a national study, and that is how long it takes the average EMS unit to click and route.
Deborah Dawson, Dan Klein, and Randy Brown.
So when you're calculating an average response time in our county, how do you factor in the calls that are not responded to?
So when our data analyst pulls that data for us, the only calls that she is pulling for us are the calls that they are dispatched to. So that is how we come up with those numbers. And then we take out any of the calls that they didn't actually respond to, so it doesn't skew their actual response time.
But the fact remains that our response is worse, I guess, than the response time would indicate, because it doesn't factor in all the people who need help who don't get it.
That's right.
Thank you.
Dan Klein, Randy Brown, Ann Corman, and Greg Mezzi.
Thank you. So I've been spending a lot of time, trying to understand this whole system. The more I look into it, the more I realize something we probably all know a little bit, but that all these emergency medical services around the county are intertwined. They all back each other up. What happens to one affects the other ones. And with that in mind, can you put that slide up again, the one where the scatter dot one where you took Bang's ambulance out? Yeah. So I want to make sure I'm getting this right. When you look at all those dots within the town of Ithaca and the city of Ithaca, that's a rural ambulance service that's coming into the town and the city. Is that accurate?
Correct.
I just want to make sure that people understand that even the city, even the town, which is better covered than most places, is relying on rural ambulances. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was the slide that shows the calls by category, that chart with the 6, yeah. So I think I've been interpreting this incorrectly, so I want to see if I've got this right. You're saying, so let's go to Brookendale, 41% of calls are unanswered. You're saying are you saying those are only the Delta and the other one?
Correct, that's correct. Because they're not even alerted that the other calls are coming in.
So 41% of the most serious calls are not getting...
Correct.
Okay, I had been misinterpreting that, so it's actually worse than I thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Randy Brown?
Yeah, I was curious about the same slide. So when a call is not answered, who's deciding not to answer it? Are the fire departments saying that's not what I'm going to respond
Correct.
to? Or?
So it would be Brookendale saying we're not going to respond to Omega, Alpha Bravo, Charlie's. Cuga Heights says that they'll respond to any call that comes in their district and so on.
So if I understand this, so it says, I'm looking at Newfield, and it says 40% are unanswered, and you have Omega and Alpha not dispatched. So you're saying those categories were dispatched or the other ones?
Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echoes were dispatched to Newfield.
So they're not being dispatched by protocol for Omega and Alpha calls.
Okay. Okay, and so they may themselves, the fire department themselves, be saying, we're not responding to that.
That's correct.
It usually comes from a member of management. So
Somebody's making a decision that we're not responding to that.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ann Corman?
Same slide. Follow-up to that question is, so does somebody else another agency get dispatched?
just the transport agency.
Well, let's make sure we understand the question. Okay. So are we talking about on a call that by protocol they're not dispatched to, or?
Either, I guess, for any reason, whether by protocol or they're not available, then what happens? Does the call go to some other agency?
If it's a call that they're not dispatched by protocol, that call does not go to another agency. If it's a call For example, with, a Bravo, Charlie, or Delta, if they're not able to answer the call, recently the fire chiefs changed the protocol. It used to be that we would automatically dispatch a mutual aid rescue. However, that was becoming problematic because some of the stronger mutual aid rescue companies felt that they were being overtasked by rescues that were having issues getting out the door. So what they decided to do is if they're not able to answer one of the calls that they were dispatched to in a category that they are dispatched to, that prior to us calling mutual aid, meaning the 911 center, we would reach out to the transport agency first to find out if they're already on scene, and if they are, do they still need assistance? If they do need assistance, the next question would be, do you need folks with medical training, or you just need personnel there to assist with the removal of the patient? And the reason why we need to distinguish that is because if they need additional medical staff, then we have to make sure we call a rescue that has the training, the individuals on the rescue that are at least an EMT. If they only need personnel to help with the removal of the patient from the home, like lifting assistance, then we can dispatch the fire department, not the rescue, but the fire department for a lift assist. So that's the protocol that I think we decided back in August or September.
So I'm just trying to get this clear in my head and be transparent to the public probably too. So then, of these calls here and other calls that aren't able to be answered by that municipality, is somebody else being called, or is their fire department sometimes being called? So are you saying that if somebody at home is calling for help and nobody's going out?
Other than a transport, I'm sorry.
That's right. I was just say, so, again, using Brookendale just because they're at the top of the list, if an alpha call comes in, the only EMS staff that's going to be dispatched is going to be your transport ambulance.
Yeah, maybe that's an important thing for us to emphasize. So,
okay, so somebody's going out then to transport
so
them.
when we,
okay.
These are our rescue units. That means first responder, fire. They're dispatched. We're dispatching EMTs, typically in a first response level vehicle. When we are dispatching a fire rescue to a call, they are being simultaneously dispatched with a transport agency. However, because of the length of time it can take some transport agencies to get on scene, that's why it's so critical to have a first responder rescue service. So I just want to make sure that the legislature understands, that the public understands that when we dispatch these calls, we are dispatching an ambulance along with the rescue, but and this slide just represents the rescue units and what they're capable of doing.
Okay. And slide 5, I think. No, this is slide 5. The slide where it talked about the number 6 option, can you put that up? The cost share option. So I just wanted to just look at that for a second and just make note that the city of Ithaca is included in this one. Okay, thank you.
Greg Mezzi.
My colleagues before me have sort of hit on it, but as they've been talking, I've had some more questions. If we could go back to the other slide, sorry to belabor this one. Just to understand a little bit further, is there an event where somebody, sorry to pick on Brookendale, if somebody in Brookendale's area were to call with an echo call and Brookendale was unable to answer with a rescue response, and you dispatch a transport, is there a scenario where the transport would not have the personnel to be able to treat that level of call?
Just so it's not, they should be able to treat that level of call because most of our units in the county are paramedic level units. There are some occasions where an agency might roll with just EMTs, but that's not the norm. Typically speaking, they are rolling with a paramedic, which means they would be able to service the higher level advanced life support calls.
So generally, just to kind of touch on that, generally if that's what happens, if it's an EMT that responds as a BLS ambulance, they do what we call a load and go. So when they get on the scene, they're going to load the patient in the ambulance. They're going to do everything in their training to help stabilize the patient, and they're going to beat feet towards the hospital. And either they're going to meet up with a paramedic en route to the hospital, or the hospital becomes their closest ALS. So even if it is a BLS truck that goes, they still are trained to treat echo calls. They just don't have as many tools in their toolbox in order to treat those.
So the takeaway is that we're not leaving calls unanswered. We're just not providing the level of service, which is maybe the sort of the best standard of service delivery for these type of calls.
Yes. So basically, they're not going unanswered in the aspect that if you call 911, you're still going to get an ambulance. Where we're seeing our gap is some of our volunteer rescues that first respond, and their task is to get on scene first, help stabilize the patient, and then when the ambulance arrives, they help load the patient and transport to the hospital. We're seeing a gap in the local rescue responses. So that means that some people who live further out are waiting longer for a first responder to show up.
So my last follow-up question, if I may. Obviously, you don't ever want to penalize a group that obviously is hurting, right? Because that's why there's unanswered calls. Is there any implication from state, federal, or other funding sources where unanswered call percentage for volunteer rescue agencies comes into play? Like, or is anybody at jeopardy because they can't meet certain standards or anything like that? It's just
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right. So there's no penalty for
That would only happen at the local level.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Lee Shirtliff?
Another aspect, Joe, how many would you say, or Mike, are sign-offs or not transported when they get there? And my point to raising that question is, the consequence of this is that over 9 times out of 10, probably closer to 95 times out of 100, you're sending a paramedic staffed ambulance out on whatever to make sure that it's getting covered. And in many cases, you don't necessarily need that level of clear, and you don't necessarily need the transport, but the consequence is to get somebody there, you're utilizing that resource. Is that an issue in your view?
So definitely something that we have put some thought into. We don't have any way of tracking what happens once they're on scene. So we don't know if they arrive on scene and there's just no patient there, and it was a third-party caller that thought maybe something was happening. We don't know if they obtained a patient refusal. Really the only way we'd be able to track it is to know whether they transported or not. And then from there, we don't know how many patients they transported. Did they do one sign-off and transport one patient, like at an MVA? So we would really have to rely on the transport agencies to tell us if they're getting sign-offs. But that is something that we have talked about wanting to track once we're up and running, to know exactly how we can alleviate some of the ALS ambulances from going on those types of calls, or at least cancel them so they go back in service. They can answer the next Delta or Echo call.
Better utilization of the limited resources that you've got by doing this.
Unfortunately, right now, we don't have any means to get those numbers, but that is one of the metrics we're hoping to track with a rapid medical response.
And the majority of the calls are at a basic level, frankly. We don't have the solid number, but it is absolutely at the basic level, which means we have paramedics that are going to calls that could otherwise be handled by an EMT staff.
Thank you.
Craig Mezzi?
Yeah, sorry, one last question. How does Cornell or Cornell's EMS program fit into this, or is that information tracked? Is that completely separate?
So that would be tracked by Cornell directly. We don't have access to their stuff, but Cornell's EMS is very similar to what we're looking to do. They're just a first response agency. They don't transport.
And then whatever the jurisdiction covering that area within Cornell's campus would be the responding.
Usually banks,
okay, for transport.
For transport, yes.
Okay, so their model with their SUVs is very similar to what you're proposing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Veronica Pillar?
Thank you. And I'm sorry if you covered this already, because I was kind of backing up trying to understand the response times. Could you go to the response time slide? Yeah, so here, this is a list of rescues in the chart on the left. So for each row, the response time is the average response time of all the calls that rescue responded to. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So when it says national average 4 minutes, that's the average of what exactly?
That's how long the national average it takes for an EMS unit to, from the time they're dispatched to the time that they go en route.
Okay. Wait, from the time, sorry, say that again?
Time that they are dispatched to the time they go en route. They leave the station.
Okay. Oh, so it's not about when they arrive. But so these response times are they the same thing? Okay. What proportion of calls for EMS does this represent that might be responded to by a rescue? Like roughly, because I would imagine, say, like if I'm in downtown Freeville and I see someone just like pass out on the street and I call 911 and say, there's an unconscious person, what is gonna happen? I imagine multiple things might happen, but like how does this route?
So from there, it's going to depend on the types of questions they ask. They're going to launch what's called ProQA. It's our dispatch software. It's going to prompt the call taker to ask you certain questions to figure out what resources are needed. That is how they get their dispatch priority to determine if it's an Alpha call or a Charlie or a Delta. If it's depending on what fire district you're in, what rescue district you're in, if it's a high enough priority, they're going to dispatch the rescue and a transport ambulance.
Okay. Do these rescue districts collectively cover the whole county?
No. Because townships like the town of Groton, with the exception of the McLean Fire District, the village of Dryden, Slaterville no longer has a rescue, Ulysses doesn't have a rescue, and Speedsville has a rescue, but they don't have any certified EMS personnel. So those areas do not have a rescue.
Okay, and that's broken up by fire district?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we do have a resolution that is associated with this presentation, and I'm going to ask Rich John to bring forward the resolution.
And I would like to move the resolution that's in your red folder. This is Resolution X, a resolution in support of negotiating a memorandum of understanding between Tompkins County and municipalities within the county for a pilot rapid medical response system. And I'd move it.
Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Mike Lane.
Point of order. Do we have to move the one that's in the packet first and then offer an amendment?
The one that was in the packet was approved by committee, is that right? Then we should move the one.
Okay, so I can't short circuit that.
No.
Then maybe somebody else needs to move it so I can then
Okay.
move to amend.
Can I have someone move the resolution in our packet? Moved by Veronica Pillar, seconded by Greg Mezzi. And Rich John?
I would move to amend the resolution to the version that's in your red packet.
Okay,
If I can get a second.
can I have a seconder? Mike Lane, seconds?
And if I could speak to the amendment. I have added in the language that was taken out of the resolution that was first considered by Public Safety, with the exception that the last resolved, I've changed the language to what you can see in the yellow. And in speaking to the amendment, I'd like to thank Michael and Joseph for their presentation and the time they've given to the Public Safety Committee on this issue. For those who are at home, I'm sure you sat through all of our budget meetings and watched with great interest, but we're on the edge of doing something about this. And I think this is really exciting and important. This is probably one of the most transformational things the county legislature will be doing in 2024, in that historically, counties have not been involved in emergency medical services, but for all the reasons you just heard about in the presentation, we believe it's time to do something. And we put money into our budget to start, a pilot rapid medical response. And this is to work in collaboration with the existing emergency medical services and transport agencies. It gives us the opportunity to drastically improve these response times. And to introduce the county to work collaboratively with all of the other municipalities on getting it done. We put half of the cost of the startup and the first year operating costs into our budget. We put the second half into contingency, meaning that we would then vote later to determine whether to spend the second half of the money. We did that because of this issue of cost share, and you heard about the several different options. We'd originally been presented with 5. We now have the Dan Klein option 6, which is an interesting one. But the amendments I've offered to the resolution would direct our county administrator to meet with the other municipalities and work on how are we going to fund this program going forward in a way that is fair to those, to everybody involved. Certainly there is benefit that's countywide, and with half of the cost being in the county budget already, everybody's going to pay something towards this. The question is, how do we pay for the rest, and how do we fairly divide that cost? The resolution does not say how that's done, but just that we need to sit down and have those conversations. The further change from what was at public safety is in the last resolved, where we say we need to get a memorandum of understanding with a negotiated cost share for the 2025 year. Putting that in recognizes that towns have already passed their budgets. You know, the ship has sailed, and we don't want to wait a year. We need to do something about this now. So what we would be asking Lisa to do is to go forward with negotiations for the budget year after the one we're about to embark upon. And I support.
Thank you, Rich. Would anyone like to speak to Resolution X, the amendment that Rich and Mike have brought forth? I have Mike Sigler and then Veronica Pillar.
I think, I mean, the reason that these were pulled, the last change, I don't really have that much of an issue with. I don't think it's necessary. But the other thing, the other two changes, I mean, Richard brought those forward in committee, I think, and we pulled them out.
Mike, could you speak in the microphone a little better?
Sure. I mean, the reason we pulled those out was basically because, I mean, I don't know about everybody's opinion on this, but that's kind of not how the county works. It's very difficult to allocate money as to any kind of fair system within the county. I mean, we could pull out a lot of things out of the county budget and say, well, that doesn't treat this town fairly or this other town. I mean, we're a whole county, and I think if we kind of go down this road, whereas we're starting to look at what's good for the county and allocate it according to which residents are getting the most benefit from it, that's not really a path I think that's healthy or one that I wanted to go down. That's why these two things on the first page here were removed. So just something to consider. I hope you'll consider it.
Thank you, Mike. Veronica Pillar.
Thank you. I agree with everything Mike Sigler said. I also supported pulling, well, it wasn't these phrases. They were different at committee and similar. And I guess I had a couple concerns. One was the final phrase originally had said that the proposed MOU would need to be approved before the program started. This new amendment says it would have to be approved before continuing into 2025, which I am fine with. I have no problem with that. But the fairness thing, I guess this first phrase, and further wishes to allocate the financial burdens and system benefits of the PRMR to county residents on a fair basis, I guess is fine. Of course you wish to do that. But I don't think we can necessarily, I don't think we can figure out what is fair before the program starts. And also, we've all got different senses of what would be fair. And the second yellow thing in the last whereas, it adds, and to fairly allocate a portion of the cost to those residents who will receive the benefit. This I don't like at all, because I don't think that in general, when our government does things, that the costs of our work should be directly paid by the people who are receiving the benefit. I mean, maybe you can argue that, of course, we wouldn't do this on an individual to individual level, but maybe on a municipality to municipality level, I don't know. But part of the whole point of government is that an individualistic Wild West does not work to run a society. And so we need some some collective central, I guess it doesn't have to be central, but we need some collective structure to organize things, like our emergency response department, like our health department, like systems that just could not exist without some organizing body, and it needs resources to run. So yes, resources are going to come into the county and come out, and it's not necessarily going to balance out to value in equals value out for every single person, just because A, why should it? And B, not all the value is in dollars. It comes in various forms, so I don't know how you'd even begin to calculate it. That said, it sounds like since this was first considered, the municipalities have had a bunch of conversations, and folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there is appetite to do some collective negotiation around cost sharing around this program in general. And while I wouldn't support, and I know this resolution doesn't do this, but I wouldn't support the county trying to pick one of the cost sharing models and impose it on them, it does sound like it's a good and productive thing for them all and our county administrator to come together to have some kind of negotiation. So I would support the original resolution, but I'm not going to vote for this amendment. And if it passes, I'll probably propose a smaller amendment to the amendment.
Thank you. I have Randy Brown, Deb Dawson, and Mike Lane.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for working on this. My question is just a question. So basically this resolution is just to authorize our administrator to negotiate this with the other municipalities, and they may or may not do that, but it just, that's all it does, right? All right, thanks.
Okay. Deb Dawson.
So government services aren't free. Somebody pays for them. I don't have a problem trying to apportion that cost as between the county and constituent municipalities. We're looking for some sort of fair allocation of those costs. We're not dictating what that will look like. The entire point of this, I think, is to empower our county administrator to negotiate with our constituent municipalities to reach a mutually agreeable idea about what would be a fair allocation of those costs. And we're not dictating what that would look like. Again, as Randy points out, we're just authorizing Lisa to negotiate. And I think by delaying that process until the second year of the program gives us the opportunity to have some data on how much this rapid medical response pilot improves the number of calls that are responded to and the response times. And that will enable all of the parties to these negotiations to figure out just how much this is worth to them. So I do support the amendment as proposed by Rich, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Lane.
Yeah, I think Rich made a good point about the fact that this has not been a county purview to do this kind of emergency medical response. It always has been at the local level. If we simply say we're going to take it over, then what's to stop other municipalities from dropping their coverage that they have, their ambulance services, for example, and just say, well, let the county do it. Why should we do it? Even when the county took over the solid waste responsibility, the county instituted the solid waste fee that went out. It was a fee for service, basically, to pay for the closure of landfills that were used by all the municipalities and things like that. It does matter how things are taxed. If that weren't true, well, we would just say let's stop taxing anything at Tompkins County and let the state do it all. Well, they aren't going to do it. And I don't think that the Townsend should be able to say to the county, we're not going to do it, you just do it. We have an open process of discussing through Tompkins County Council of Governments and other avenues how these things should be ironed out. And I think we can do that. But I don't think we should make a commitment to go forward indefinitely without the support of and the financing to some method. And I'm not saying which method is best, but some method in which the municipalities have a dog in the fight.
Thank you, Mike. I have Lee Shurtleff and then Ann Corman, then myself.
Thank you. What makes the resolution palatable to me is that last line that's been added as a condition of continuing the PRMR in the 2025 budget year. Deborah's points are well taken. 1 year is insured moving ahead, and it gives the Department of Emergency Response and the services time to develop the measures and develop the data. And I think a year from now, when we look at this, you're going to see success with this program. It also enables us to move forward with a shared services grant application, which may alleviate some of the fiscal stress. But one thing about this, in having the conversation, it leads to a serious conversation about the provision of emergency services overall in Tompkins County and the costs thereof, which are in the many millions of dollars. And it's a serious conversation that needs to be had with the municipalities. As I stated with the Council of Governments, the situation with EMS is an overall volunteer situation that is manifesting now in EMS, but we're going to see it in a much broader realm in the years ahead with fire services. And to Veronica's point, there is an indication of an appetite to have this conversation. So let's move forward with this. Thank you.
Okay. I have Ann Corman, myself, and Veronica Pillar.
Thank you. I'd like to see if we can come to a compromise, and in that vein, so we can, I'm hoping that this could be unanimous or near unanimous vote on this. It's really important, and I know we want to get it started as soon as possible. So my proposal is an amendment to the amendment, and that is on the last whereas, where it says, in order to ensure overall enhancement of the emergency response system and to fairly allocate a portion of the cost. I would stop there and delete to those residents who will receive the benefit. That's stated above in another area, not in exactly that way, but, and then we have down in the resolved about that direct the county administrator to invite municipalities, et cetera, to determine an MOU. So I think it's pretty clear that we want to work with the municipalities. So I think we could get a near unanimous. So I wonder if there's a second for that.
Are you saying on the last whereas to fairly allocate the costs?
portion of the cost. And then,
When you allocate, you generally have to allocate to somebody. So
well, then
if you want to remove, I mean, yeah, you have to allocate it to something. You have to fairly allocate to something.
and then in the resolved, it addresses that we're going to work with municipalities.
I don't find it friendly, just saying.
Oh, there, that takes care of that.
It's an amendment.
I'll second it.
Okay, so the amendment to the amendment. Any other questions or comments? Rich?
Yeah, commenting on the amendment to the amendment. The point of this is to give direction to Lisa Holmes. And I think we should be clear on what we're asking her to do. The whereas as written seems to do that. Taking it out so we don't know where the costs are going to be allocated doesn't help us. So I do not support.
Okay, we're talking to the amendment. I have Veronica, Greg, and Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. I support this, and if the amendment to the amendment passed, then I would vote for the amendment. I'm fine with all of it, because I like this because it still says that we want things to be fair, which of course, and if we cut out just those 8 words, to those residents who will receive the benefit, then we are not presupposing anything about how fairness should look, which I think is appropriate. And honestly, I think that cutting those words would free up our administrator a little more to take input from the municipalities and the ambulance services. I guess it's more the other municipalities, for them to express their needs, their experiences, their residents' willingness or lack thereof to pay. The idea of allocating costs to the residents who will receive the benefit would make sense if our status quo was already fair, but I don't think our status quo is fair, and I don't really want to debate that because, again, what does fair mean? Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so I just want to have a time check-in. We're at 6:47 right now. We have about 300 more topics to go tonight. We have 5 executive session topics, and we have 4 people that would like to speak to the amendment. So we're pretty deep in this resolution right now. I'll just point out, whenever we're talking about fairness, we're talking about Enfield, Newfield, Groton. Let's be honest, they're probably 70, 80% of the poverty rate. Is that right, Lee? And Randy's not here, but it's pretty impoverished in your areas. And I guess whenever we're talking about fairness and we're asking Lee's people and Randy's people to pay the exact same amount as maybe someone in the town of Ithaca, I personally don't see that as fair. So I'm not going to support the amendment, and I'm probably not going to vote for the resolution. Let's keep in mind we're on a bit of a time schedule. This is very important, and I want to get through this. I want to give Lisa some guidance, but we also, as we know, the longer our meetings go, the less productive we are, and we have a lot to vote on and take care of tonight. Greg, Amanda, and Lee.
In the interest of operational efficiency, I don't necessarily see how the amendment really substantially changes the resolution. If it creates a greater sense of compromise around our colleagues getting behind this, potentially maybe 13, maybe 12 people voting for it, maybe everybody, I don't see how removing to those residents who will receive the benefit materially changes the contract. But if it brings others to the table that otherwise wouldn't be at the table at this resolution, I feel better about that. So I will support that because I don't think it really changes anything. And I think this is something we have to do. Like, we have to do this. So hopefully we can move that along.
Okay. Amanda?
I'm just still stuck on the language. If you allocate something, you have to allocate it to something or someone. So is what you're trying to say, and to fairly divide the costs, or it's just not a complete sentence if you take out those words. So that's my grammar note for the night.
Lee and then Deborah.
I'll be quick, and I'm not being funny, but this resolution doesn't really define who will receive the benefit. We're all making assumptions as to who will receive the benefit, but I tell you, after a year, you're going to realize that the benefit is extended beyond those that are receiving the majority of the first response service. So take it out if you want, but I think, as has been said, it gives some direction to the administrator, and it also allows us to define who's receiving the benefit when we've got this data behind us. Thanks.
Thank you. Deb?
Yeah, at the risk of channeling Dooley Kiefer, I have problems with the grammar of what you're proposing. If you said to fairly distribute the costs of this program, I could get on board with that. But to allocate a portion to no one, it's just not correct English.
Veronica?
It's Dooley territory over here.
Dooley area.
Duly noted.
Never gets old.
I have no issue with that wording, and I don't think Annie does either. Whatever you just
To
proposed.
fairly distribute the
But
costs.
procedurally, how would we switch from
That would have to be friendly with, no.
You can withdraw your amendment to the amendment and then make a new amendment to the amendment. And I would vote for it.
Great. What was the wording you had?
To fairly distribute the costs.
Great. Well, Annie, it's your amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, whoever moved it has to withdraw it.
Madam Chair, I'd like to withdraw my amendment.
Okay.
I'd like to propose a new one.
Okay.
And that would be in that same line. Get by with a little help with my colleagues. And to fairly distribute
the costs.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Seconded by Travis Brooks. Any questions or comments on the amendment to amendment? Okay, let's vote on the amendment to the amendment. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's unanimous. Dan Klein?
Back on the First Amendment.
Back on the First Amendment.
Yeah, I want to say something that hasn't been said yet, which is, the only trouble I have with is the final change that Rich is proposing, the very final resolved. And it says, the county administrator shall report back the results of that negotiation. So that's fine. It's the rest of it. And the legislature shall approve the memorandum of understanding. So that presupposes that we're going to be successful. And if we're not, this says, as a condition of continuing the project in the 2025 budget year, it implies that we're not going to do it. We're just going to stop. We have already approved this as a 2-year pilot. So the legislature's already said we're doing this for 2 years. This concerns me because it implies that if we can't get something out of you, we're done.
Thank you, Dan. Rich, Deborah, and Greg.
The negotiation can lead to lots of different scenarios, as the proposal or the presentation showed us. The critical element of a memorandum of understanding is that we want to enhance the services. Without a memorandum of understanding, there is no guarantee that any of the municipalities would maintain their current level of service. So I believe a cost share is the best way of creating incentive for maintaining levels of service. But you could have a memorandum of understanding with the county paying everything. But if there is no memorandum of understanding, that means there's no coordinated system at all. So yes, we may face a hard decision going through 2025. Do we continue this? But if we cannot get agreement on a collaborative system, with our fellow municipalities, I think the whole thing is in jeopardy. So that's why I put it in that way. And I think we need to understand that it is not just getting some money back from the towns, it is getting a commitment. And that's what the MOU does. So yes, that was deliberate.
Deb Dawson?
Well, as I read this, we're giving Lisa direction on what we would like to see negotiated, but she's not guaranteed to come back with what we want to see. And further to Rich's point, the results she may bring back may be nothing more than the municipalities who have services currently committing to continue those services even if the county fully funds the rapid medical response program that we're about to embark on. I don't think that cost share is necessarily the result that that final result requires. Yeah, I think either cost share and or a commitment to continue existing services independent of the county is what we're looking for here. And I don't have any problem with requiring that in order to continue this.
Greg?
I think we need to leave a little bit of negotiating leverage in the resolution and also not fully write a resolution that says, hey, we're just going to pay for this if we can't come to an agreement. Because I don't think that maybe is the consensus of, I mean, obviously we haven't voted on that, but I just don't get a sense of the body that that would be the direction that we potentially would go. So I think leaving it in there, but I wonder if the word the memorandum of understanding should not be a memorandum of understanding, because what is, again, I'm like the C grammar student, so what is the memorandum of understanding, or do we just want to have the county and the municipalities come to some form of an agreement so that we can move this forward?
Is that another amendment to the amendment?
That's to the main motion, but I think that's
Is that friendly?
grammatical. I think it's certainly friendly to me.
Okay.
I would just propose on the, I guess it's the second to last line before the seeker action, where it says the memorandum of understanding to a memorandum of understanding.
Okay. Okay.
Could be worse.
Lee Shurtleff?
Let's understand, this is monumental. The county is moving into providing a service as a county entity that we have, I don't say merely, but have coordinated. And if it's successful, and I expect it will be successful, and if it moves forward and probably provides us a model for future service provisions in other areas, we damn well better have an understanding with the municipalities, because they can easily hand it to us and say, county wants to do it, it's yours. There's some divisions throughout state law on it. Let's have a good understanding of this whole thing.
Thank you, Lee. Also, I'm glad it was you that said the bad word tonight and not Deborah Dawson.
My bad words are badder.
I told you, I've been up since 3 a.m. I'm sorry.
Okay. Any other conversation? Okay, all those in favor of the resolution with the amendment, please raise your hand.
Wait. Don't we need to vote on the amendment?
Sorry, we're voting on the amendment itself, right?
Yep. We only voted on the amendment to the amendment. Now we're voting on the amendment.
Yes, with those amendments to that.
Yes.
Is essentially the substitution.
Yes.
Right.
We need
Vote
clarification
separately.
again? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you all. Good job.
Now we have to vote on the amended resolution.
Okay, let's go.
Tough last meeting.
I had my colonoscopy yesterday. Good medication.
TMI, Shauna.
Good excuse. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Not after that.
Not after that.
Oh, you win.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you.
Is that unanimous?
That was unanimous.
Woohoo! Yes.
One thing.
Okay.
Excuse me, Shauna. Could we ask for a copy of the resolution as amended to be emailed to us, please?
Take care of it tomorrow.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the NYSEG and RG&E rate case, outcome and lessons learned.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
You can.
Awesome. And you're seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is on packet page 8. Hi, everyone. I'm Haley Delisle, the Sustainability Coordinator for the county. I apologize I can't be there in person today, but we'll make it through. Today I'm going to talk to you about the NYSEG and RG&E rate case, the outcome, and some lessons learned. My colleague Terry and I both participated in this, and he's in person there, so he'll help with any questions if needed. So in short, NYSEG and RG&E are a regulated monopoly, so they are required to file a rate case to determine the fee that they can collect. Tonight, I'll talk about our participation, some lessons that we learned through that participation. I'll go into a little bit about the process and kind of what we learned there. I'll discuss the rate case decision, what that means for Tompkins County residents and your constituents, and then I'll talk about what's next. So first and foremost, to participate in this case, we became parties to this. So Terry and I both became parties to the case. After doing that, we reviewed the rate case submission. So the companies, NYSEG and RG&E, submit their rate proposal, and this is available to the public to review. Next, we observed basically the whole process and how it works to have a better understanding. And the folks who participate in this are the companies and Department of Public Service, and then various parties throughout the service territories. And in some cases, those folks are well-oiled machines and really know how the process works. And for us, Tompkins County folks who participated, we did not know how the process worked. So that was kind of our role this time, was to sit back and kind of see how it works. At one point, we did advocate for the rate case, and I'm sure you've heard about the NYSEG billing issues, or may have even been affected yourselves. We did advocate for those to be kept separate, so to not be decided in the same proceeding, but rather separate and public, how those would get figured out. So a couple of lessons learned. We, just in observing the process in the rate case, a lot of different topics are a part of it. And there are a lot of folks from NYSEG and RG&E and the Department of Public Service who are experts on these topics. So some of those include vegetation management, renewables, battery storage. There's a lot of talk about economics and return on investment and et cetera, and gas planning and several more. I'll go over in the next couple of slides kind of the process. This is a very complicated process and there's no like rate case 101 to kind of figure it out. So I'll dig into that a little bit later. Just an observation, no other municipalities in the NYSEG RG&E territory participated. So we flagged this as maybe a potential for future collaboration. This is a significant undertaking. There are thousands of documents that kind of fly back and forth between various parties, and there are several hours of meetings a week. And I'll just note, I'll go into this a little bit more in detail as well. Later in the process, working groups are established, and there will be meetings for those throughout the week, and they're usually several hours long, usually scheduled last minute, so it can make it difficult to participate fully. And lastly, we learned how a rate case works and how we could be more impactful next time, which I'll dig into a little bit. So this is a graphic that I created. There isn't something like this out there that kind of explains the process thoroughly. And so I won't go over it in depth, as I know you're on a time crunch, but this is all in your packet and you can reference it later. But basically what kicks off a rate case is the rate case is filed by the utility. They have to submit a proposal for a 1-year rate increase. Once that happens, then stakeholders can become parties to the case, and you need to do that if you're wanting to comment or participate in negotiations as part of the case, because once you reach the negotiation part, that is all confidential, and only parties are privy to that information. But jumping back just a little bit, the administrative law judges are assigned to the case. They kind of discuss the process and most importantly, the schedule of how it's all going to work. Staff and interveners, or parties, that words used interchangeably, engage in discovery. So once the rate case is filed, you're open to ask questions, ask for more information, point out some discrepancies, et cetera. And then with each rate case, a public hearing is required. In this last rate case, this public hearing was done before we went into negotiations. So there was discussion from the public, and that was available. This, however, can happen after a joint proposal is reached. So one thing that interveners can do is advocate for a public hearing to happen before a joint proposal can happen. And then what kind of kicks off before going into negotiations, there's a counter from the Department of Public Service. So they review the initial rate case filed by the utility, and they propose a counter offer, usually less than what the rate case had, or the utility has originally offered. Then once that happens, negotiations commence. And I'll just note a couple of interesting things here. Once it goes into negotiations, the discussion then becomes more focused around a 3-year proposal. So this is a pretty in-depth and arduous process. So to do one every year would use up a lot of resources. So in negotiations, it tends to change into a 3-year rate discussion. Also, everything that happens in negotiations is confidential. So if you're not a party to the case, you can't discuss it. So some challenges that we faced in our participation is that we could not come to the legislature or PEAK, our committee that we work with. We could not come to them and let them know kind of what's going on and where we thought we could advocate. So there's an opportunity there to potentially make that process a little bit better. And then the other important part I'll mention about negotiations is that the administrative law judges are not privy to what happens during that process either. They are allowed to be told, like, the process is going well or the process isn't going well, but they're not privy to any of the specifics that are happening there. And then during this time, discovery continues, and you can ask questions about anything that's happening. The next step here is, as I mentioned earlier, working groups are established, and that's where you do a deeper dive into certain topics that have been presented in the case, and you can get into the nitty-gritty of things. The administrative law judges will check in here. Negotiations will continue as long as the administrative law judges are okay with kind of how the process is going. And then a joint proposal, once negotiations are kind of winding down, a joint proposal has been reached. Another important part here is that only the companies in the Department of Public Service have to sign on to a joint proposal. The other parties or stakeholders who are a part of the process are not required to sign on. Usually the hope is that they will, but it is not a requirement. Then there's an opportunity to write a statement of support or opposition. So you can discuss why you would support or not support. However, you can't disclose any information that was discussed during negotiations. Then an evidentiary hearing is scheduled, and this is where the joint proposal is presented to the administrative law judges assigned to the case. So they hear from all the parties on different topics. Then there's an opportunity to present a post-hearing brief. This is limited to new information that came forward during the evidentiary hearing, and it's an opportunity to argue against the new information that was presented. And then the last step here is that the administrative law judges will present the rate case to the Public Service Commission, where they can reject, revise, or approve, accept the rate case that was put forward. So jumping to what happened in this most recent rate case, the Public Service Commission approved a joint proposal, which was 62% electricity delivery rate increase and a 17.8% gas delivery rate increase. I will note here that $55 million in investment was awarded to Ithaca for some reliability projects. These are mostly focused on the increased electricity demand that's expected for our area. So just wanted to note that as well. So what does this mean? So for an average customer who's using 600 kilowatt hours a month, so you have to keep in mind someone who may have an electric vehicle and a heat pump, their average month usage will be a lot higher than this. But just as an average, this increase means, so for the first year, which started in November 1st of 2023, their existing bill built for delivery on the electricity side, plus $10 a month. And then that will happen until May of 2024 of next year. And then they will see an increase of $10 plus $9 for the next year to their bill. And then for rate year 3, which begins in May of 2025, they will see an increase of $30 on their bill. And then similarly for gas, this is for an average customer, and you can kind of see the breakdown there with a total increase for the 3 rate years of what they were currently paying in October of 2023 plus $10 by rate year 3.
And Haley, can I interrupt you? This is Annie.
Yeah.
So that's per month, correct?
Correct. Right. Correct. Per month. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's next. So the next rate case won't happen for about 2 years. Something that we could do is confer with the county attorney on how to share information. So I mentioned a lot about the confidentiality that happens during negotiations. So we could work to figure out if there's a way to share information with the subcommittee or something. So that's a potential option. We could obtain a clear directive from the legislature. So what would you like to be advocated for? Is keeping electric rates as low as possible, something that you'd be interested in, or working to advance electrification or what have you. So obtaining a clear directive so that we could be more effective in the areas that we're allowed to participate in. And then the third or fourth option here is we could hire a third party to represent county interest. So Westchester County and New York City do this. They're in different utility areas than us, but that's an option. They basically have a lawyer who goes in and kind of advocates for them. And so with that, I can take any questions.
Mike Lane?
Well, that's a lot to be able to digest here, but that's a great presentation. Thank you. I wondered, does our Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance, does that advocate in these rate cases?
That's a good question. As far as I know, I don't think so. Terry, I don't know if you know for sure.
They do not. They weren't a party to this rate case, and I haven't seen them in any of the other rate cases either.
Thanks.
Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, thanks so much. This is the second time I've seen the presentation, and it gets me every time that the commission is smiling in the picture as we share this information with the public. If you look at the living wage in Tompkins County at $18.45 an hour, right, which is going up to the new living wage. If I misspoke, someone chime in and correct me, please. It means about 31 hours potentially, between 26 and 31 hours that someone will have to make or work in year 3 to cover the increase. So when you put it that way, it's like a whole extra week of work, you know, maybe plus a little bit more, just to cover the increase on some of this stuff. Obviously, the living wage has increased and likely is going to have to continue as these costs increase. But I really think that this is something that we should be planning to be as actively involved as possible moving forward. And I would look to our staff to provide guidance on how the 14, soon to be 16 of our voices can be inserted in that conversation. Because this is crazy, and this is real money for real people. And it's going to mean a lot more hard work that people have to do to just get, again, that's with an electric and gas customer too. I took the highest amount, the combination. So I just wanted to put in perspective of what it really means and what somebody's going to have to do to generate the additional money that we're asking for. Or not that we're asking for, that is being asked of them for this delivery.
Randy Brown?
Yes, Haley, thank you for the presentation. Perhaps it'd be interesting to know with Westchester County and the New York City, what their rates went up based on the representation they had to see if there's any value in that. My question is the Public Service Commission make the ultimate decision, or are they all appointed positions?
Yes, yep. They're appointed positions and they make the ultimate decision.
And it's all New York State, correct?
Yes.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Ann Corman? Mike Sigler?
Wanted to mention, well, first thanks Haley Delisle from our planning department and Terry Carroll for working on this issue and for the presentation today. So one of the frustrations was hearing that this was ongoing, and you know, Terry and Haley would tell us, you know, that things were ongoing, but they couldn't share any information with us. And so we didn't have any mechanism at that point to find out what was going on or to give any feedback in any way. So that's one of the reasons, just want to restate that's one of the reasons why we at Peak members asked Haley to come today, so that we could be more informed. And not only when it comes up again and we get that question, do we want to be part of the rate case? Do some or all the legislators or some members of a committee want to be involved? But also, we hope too that this is information too that you can bring back to your constituents too. So thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Mike Sigler?
Hi, Holly. I know that you said in the beginning some of the drivers of what NYSEG is saying. Did they do a breakdown of what's causing the drive? I mean, I don't expect that to abate in the next 2 years, like when they ask for this again, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of why I'm doing this discussion with you is we can't really discuss the specifics of it. I mean, through the joint proposal, you can see, I mean, one of the biggest contributors to this is the last rate case was just getting started, I believe, when COVID started. And so the Public Service Commission kind of came in and didn't allow for an increase at that point. So there was this is kind of a little bit backlog, I would say, is the main thing there.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much, Haley and Nick, for joining us this evening. Oh, sorry, Terry. Planning was going through my mind. We really appreciate the information you brought forth. Okay, next, if we could go forward with reports by our County Administrator, Lisa Holmes.
You have a lot on your agenda. My only update is to say that we began white collar negotiations last week. They will continue to January. And we're just busy, as everyone is, getting things in at the end of the year. So wish everyone happy holidays.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Lisa? Okay, thanks, Lisa. Next, County Attorney Holly Mosier.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. No real updates on the work. We continue to be busy with quite a bit of litigation and family court matters going on, but hopefully we'll have some help with that soon. It's my understanding that after we've been working with HR for a while now, putting together our job description for the paralegal aid position that we're going to have, I'm told that it's possibly going to be posted tomorrow, so that will be great to get another person in the office.
Any questions or comments for Holly? Okay, thank you, Holly. Next is Deputy Finance Director Drew Brayman.
Good evening, everyone. Just some quick updates for finance. We're very busy with year end. Actually had the kickoff meeting with Insero for the 2023 audit after we just finished the 2022 audit. So Conrad was here today actually going through some of the preliminary work. That was fun and exciting. Just quickly, Lori covered at the budget capital personnel last week the sales tax, casino and cash balance reports. So those are in that meeting highlights if you want to check those out. And tonight I'll be ready to talk about if there's any questions on the bond resolutions and the fund balance policy. So let me know if there's any questions.
Drew, any questions or comments for Drew? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our very lengthy. Oh, are there any resolutions to be withdrawn or added tonight? Okay, I see none. Let's go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. And it's very lengthy this evening, so please bear with me. Resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. Appointments, advisory board appointments, ID 12067. Government Operations Committee, Public Information Advisory Board, Paul Boyer, member, term expires December 31st, 2024. Carol Kamen, member, term expires December 31st, 2025. Public Safety Committee, Advisory Board on Indigent Representation, Suzanne Rain, member, term expires December 31st, 2026. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Hillview Road Landfill Citizens Advisory Committee, Brian Caldwell, at-large member, term expires December 31st, 2027. Air Services Board, Melissa Marchese, Ithaca College representative, term expires December 31st, 2026. Health and Human Services Committee, Community Mental Health Services Board, Howard Reed, member, term expires December 31st, 2026. Sheila McHenry, member, term expires December 31st, 2027. Larry Roberts, member, term expires December 31st, 2027. Janet Lynch, member, term expires December 31st, 2027. Community Mental Health Services Developmental Disability Subcommittee, Kaki Wunderlich, Community Services Board member representative, term expires December 31st, 2027. Community Mental Health Services Mental Health Subcommittee, Benjamin Komar, Consumer Representative, term expires December 31st, 2024. Susan Tabrizi, Community Member Representative, term expires December 31st, 2027. Larry Roberts, Consumer Representative, term expires December 31st, 2027. Community Mental Health Services Substance Abuse Committee, Noah Valdez, Community Member, term expires December 31st, 2024. Human Rights Commission, Anna Ortiz, member, term expires December 31st, 2025. Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Environmental Management Council, Kate Derfler, Village of Trumansburg representative, term expires December 31st, 2025. Mark Devokaitis, thank you. At-large member, term expires December 31st, 2025. Water Resources Council, Becky Sims, Municipal Government Representative, term expires December 31st, 2025. Brett Hayhurst, at-large representative, term expires December 31st, 2025. Cynthia Brock, Recreation Representative, term expires December 31st, 2025. Jenna Durario, Cornell Cooperative Extension Representative, term expires December 31st, 2026. Kristen Heichka, Municipal Government Representative, term expires December 31st, 2026. C. Elizabeth Cameron, Environmental Health Representative, term expires December 31st, 2026. Linda Wagonett, At-Large Representative, term expires December 31st, 2026. Stephanie Redmond, At-Large Representative, term expires December 31st, 2026. Sean Boussard, Agricultural Representative, term expires December 31st, 2026. Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution A, Acceptance of the Tompkins Priority Trail Strategy 2023 Update, ID 12124. Resolution B, Award of Bid 2023 Recycling and Solid Waste Center Infrastructure Upgrade Project, American Rescue Plan Act, Recycling and Materials Management Department, ID 12131. Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee, Resolution C, authorizing 2024 payments for Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget, ID 11966. Resolution D, resolution to adopt a voluntary benefits program, ID 12103. Health and Human Services Committee, Resolution E, budget adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, FoodNet Meals on Wheels, ID 12115. Resolution F, budget adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, expanded in-home services, ID 12114. Resolution G, budget adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, FoodNet Meals on Wheels, ID 12116. Resolution H, budget adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, New York Connects, ID 12117. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Resolution I, authorizing a lease extension with the Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration through September 30th, 2042 for the Air Traffic Control Tower, Ithaca Tompkins International Airport, ID 12107. Resolution J, Airline Contracts, Ithaca Tompkins International Airport, ID 12133. Resolution K, Terminal Paid Parking Contract Extension, Ithaca Tompkins International Airport, ID 12078. Government Operations Committee, Resolution L, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, ID or Policy 01-56, Donated Goods and Services, ID 12065. Resolution M, Absentee Ballot Prepaid Postage Grant Acceptance, ID 12063. Resolution N, Adoption of Apportionment of Taxes for 2024, ID 12096. Resolution O, Returned School Taxes, ID 12095. Resolution P, return village taxes, ID 12093. Resolution Q, technology, innovation, and election resource grant acceptance, ID 12076. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Travis Brooks, seconded by Deborah Dawson. And all those in favor to vote for the consent agenda, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. It is 7:30. Why don't we go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll resume at 7:40. Thank you. Okay, everyone, it is 7:40, and if we could keep this bus moving. Just waiting for the thumbs up here. Okay. We are going to reorder our business, and if we could move forward with the Chamber of Commerce resolution that we have, that it was under unfinished business, we are going to need a motion to put it back on the table. Greg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could move resolution number 2023-236, doc ID 11730, authorize the county administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce for the operation of the Ithaca-Tompkins County Convention and Visitors Bureau, CVB. I would move that.
Thank you, Greg. And Mike Sigler, you had your hand up to second it? Sure. Okay. I thought I saw your hand up. Okay. Okay. Any questions or comments? This is a motion to put it back on the table. Oh. And I see none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you.
So would you like me to introduce the changes? Mm-hmm. Okay. So there was a memo sent around. There's also a memo in your packet, but there's an email sent around this morning as well, which highlights the change. And I know Nick is here, Katie is also here, Holly's here, and we have Jennifer and Peggy, so and Lisa. So all parties are here. But essentially what this did, based on feedback from the legislature, was put a section in there that allowed a renegotiation of the contract should there be a room tax decline for 2 consecutive quarters at 25% and then at 50%. And Nick, correct me if I'm saying anything that's not factual, and that's spelled out in the contract. So it gives us the opportunity to sit down and renegotiate. And then also, too, just want to highlight some concerns that some of my colleagues had expressed when this was first introduced about funds coming out of general fund or fund balance or those types of other monies that are not room tax monies to pay for this agreement. Obviously, in accordance with our fiscal policy, any of those type of actions would need legislature approval, or any transfer between accounts essentially over $15,000, again, in line with our fiscal policy, would also need legislative approval. So we would have to approve if that were ever to be the case. But with the sort of the fences that have been put in there, I personally don't feel that we'll ever need to really get to that point.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions or comments? Deborah Dawson?
Yeah, I wanted to thank our DPS, the SDPB, our county attorney, and Jennifer and the Convention and Visitors Bureau for sitting down and working their way through this to address the concerns that we had, and particularly the concerns that I had. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Let's go ahead and vote then. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yes.
Do you want us to revote? Okay. Thank you. And we do have a recommendation as we move on to our standing and special committees tonight, that we will go through each committee and do resolutions, but it has been suggested, since we have such a long agenda, that we maybe skip out on the reports. Important points certainly we can hear about, but it might make sense for us to just get through the resolutions and move forward. Is that all right with everyone? Okay. We're going to move forward with Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. Ann Corman, Chair.
Blood pressure. Thank you. I'll be as condensed as possible. We met yesterday, and we'll have one resolution. Couple other resolutions were already in the consent agenda. We said thank you to Meg Cole, the interim director at CCE, who I think has done a great job. And we had approval of the trails strategy, and we had a presentation from Irene Weiser, Fossil Free Tompkins, regarding the new type of way that a company is going to look at trying to get land leased here in the southern tier to try and get methane out of the ground. So please, I won't go into detail, but please look at the second hour of the peak meeting yesterday, because you might have constituents that ask you about this, and because they have already reached out to 6,500 landowners in the southern tier to try and lease land. So I'll go right to the resolution, packet page 65. Budget adjustment reappropriation, establishing fund sources for the Recycling and Solid Waste Center facility, site improvements in 2023. ID 12090, and I so move.
Seconded by Travis Brooks. Any questions or comments, or would you like to explain it, Annie?
I don't need to unless there's a question.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you, Ann.
Lastly, our next meeting is on a slightly different date due to a holiday conflict, and it will be in Wednesday, January 17th at 10 a.m. And as I will be attending remotely, the Peak Vice Chair, Veronica Pillar, will be chairing that meeting here in person.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Ann Corman? Okay, thanks, Annie. I like your hat, by the way.
Thank you for noticing.
Yes. Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee, Dan Klein, Chair.
No report.
Okay. Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee, Deborah Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll just go right through our resolutions. I would move Resolution S, 2023 Blue Collar Agreement, ID 12118.
Can I have a seconder? Lee Shirtliff.
I would defer, I think, to our county administrator if anyone has any questions about this. This is an agreement that we have reached through collective bargaining.
Great. Any other questions or comments about Resolution 12118? Rich John?
I just wanted to say, great job. It's great to see we reached agreement with our blue-collar employees.
Great. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you all.
Thank you. Now I move Resolution T, changes in positions, various departments, ID 12100.
Okay, seconded by Travis Brooks.
And as I understand this, I don't see Ruby here tonight, but this is, I guess, just a resolution that formalizes changes in hours and various other aspects of our position descriptions for existing staff.
I think Ruby might be here too. Ruby is here if we need her.
Okay.
Any questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I move Resolution U, technical assistance, single occupancy housing, ID 12081.
Seconded by Rich John.
And this is a payment we would make for contracting technical assistance for one piece of our homeless problem, which is the single occupancy.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Any questions for Deborah Dawson? Okay, thanks, Deb. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar, Chair.
Thank you. The one item I want to mention, just because it came up since our last meeting, is that our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, Charlene Holmes, has found some ways to make use of our committee's budget that we didn't address too much during the year, largely by getting in some advanced registrations for the Race Forward conference in 2024, since registration's open now, and also looking at co-sponsoring or co-hosting a couple events later in the year next year that you'll be hearing about in 2024. And our next meeting is January 24th at 3 p.m.
Thank you, Veronica. Any questions or comments for Veronica? Okay, thank you. Next is Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair.
The Public Safety Committee met on Thursday, December 14th. I do have two resolutions, but I did want to just extend a thank you to Bridget Nugent for her presentation at our public safety meeting about the Community Justice Alternatives to Incarceration Advisory Board. I would move Resolution V, Budget Adjustment Appropriation from Contingent Fund Terminal Pay, Department of Probation and Community Justice, ID 12031.
Thank you. Seconded by Ann Corman. Any questions or comments for the budget adjustment? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Mike, would you like to vote on this?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. That is unanimous. Thank you.
And then I have Resolution W, Appropriation from Contingent Fund Terminal Pay, Department of Emergency Response, ID 12045.
Seconded by Lee Sherliff. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Then we have already gone through Resolution X. Anything else, Rich?
Nope.
Okay. Any questions for Rich John? Thank you very much. Downtown Facilities Special Committee, Randy Brown, Chair.
We met on December 12th. We're focused on placement of various departments in the new Center of Government building. And our next meeting is going to be the 9th of January at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Randy. Any questions or comments for Randy Brown? Okay, thank you. Next is the Health and Human Services Committee, Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you. We met yesterday. We had a presentation from Whole Health about the community health worker program. I just wanted to bring a little attention to it. It is a relatively new program. It's only been up and running a year and a half. We have 4 employees dedicated to it. So if you want to learn more, you can tune in to the recording of that committee meeting. And then I would like to go ahead with move Resolution Y, Authorization to accept funds, New York State Public Health Infrastructure Grant, Whole Health Department, ID 12091.
I have a seconder, please. Seconded by Randy Brown. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you all.
Okay. I'd like to move Resolution Z, authorization for Tompkins County to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the City of Ithaca for opioid settlement funds, Whole Health Department and City of Ithaca, ID 12126.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Susan Curry. Saw your hand first.
Just briefly, I want to say this is, this makes very good sense, but it's also like a nice opening to working cooperatively with the city. We could use a few success stories together, I guess.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you.
And I would like to move Resolution AA, authorization for Tompkins County to enter into a memorandum of understanding to provide co-response services, Whole Health Department and City of Ithaca, ID 12127.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Amanda Champion.
So I'll briefly say, and if anyone, Frank or anyone else wants to say more, I mean, this is kind of a big deal. We've started this same type of project with the Sheriff's Department. It's been up and running a couple of months. And, what we hear at least is so far so good. The Sheriff's Department put an excellent video together to promote it. And now, similar things can happen with the city. So again, it's nice to be trying these projects with the city.
Great, thank you, Dan. The sheriff and undersheriff are also here if we have questions or comments for them. Rich John?
Yeah, I just supplement what Dan said. This was, I think, one of the most interesting pillars of our reimagining public safety effort was trying to look at alternative response models. And this has worked very well so far. It's been up and running in the county, I believe, since August or September. And it seems to really be gaining traction. And I hope the same thing happens in the city. And I really commend them for taking this step.
Thank you, Rich. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you.
And then I'll just conclude by saying that our next meeting, just like Peak, is delayed because of the MLK holiday, so it'll be instead on Wednesday, January 17th at 2 o'clock. And at that meeting, we will have a presentation by Dr. William Claypack, who's the county medical director, about supervised injection facilities. So it should be an interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is, are there any questions for Dan Klein? Okay. Next is the Housing and Economic Development Committee. Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No official report. We did meet on December the 6th, Wednesday. Check us out on YouTube. It's a great meeting. And then also our next meeting is January 3rd, Wednesday.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions for Greg? Okay. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lang, Chair.
Thank you. We did meet on December 14th. I'll just mention that the time has expired for purchase offers for the Red House, and I think we'll be hearing more about that pretty soon. Most of what we did was in the bond resolutions that we have in front of you tonight. Jeff Smith and Roxanne Noble are both here. These bond resolutions require 10 votes. I go ahead and move BB, bond resolution authorizing the issuance of $1,178,000 in serial bonds and notes of the County of Tompkins to pay a portion of the cost of the replacement and reconstructing of the Midline Road culvert. That's 12098.
Can I have a seconder, please? Randy Brown. Randy?
A question about the process for bond, applying for bonds. When we apply for these, do you apply for each one individually, or do you group them all together and apply for one bond? How does that work?
Drew?
We generally group them together. So if they're bands, or bond anticipation note, often those are issued individually.
When you combine them, do they have to be the same term?
No.
You could have one that's a 10-year term and one's a 20-year term. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions or comments? Okay, as Mike mentioned, we need 10 votes to pass this. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
CC, and I would point out that there is a short explanation of why the cost went up for this project. It's in your red folder. CC is the amended and restated bond resolution of the County of Tompkins adopted December 19th, 2023, amending a bond resolution adopted October 15th, 2019 to increase the maximum estimated cost of the project and amend the plan of finance to authorize the issuance of additional serial bonds or notes to pay the cost thereof. And that's ID 12094.
Seconded by Lee Shirtliff. Any questions or comments for this resolution?
The Cortlandt Street Bridge project.
Mike? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you.
DD is the amended and restated bond resolution of the County of Tompkins, New York, adopted December 19th, 2023, amending a bond resolution dated October 18th, 2022, to increase the maximum estimated cost of the project of reconstructing the Podunk Road Bridge located within the county. And I so move. That's ID 12097.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Ann Corman. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Randy, did you have your, okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Resolution EE, a bond resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $1 million serial bonds and notes of the County of Tompkins to pay the cost to acquire certain machinery and apparatus for construction and maintenance. And that's ID 12092. This is heavy equipment.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Travis Brooks. Randy Brown?
I'm not going to vote for this one. I feel after we've reviewed all of our finances and the new policy for our reserves, and when this is for equipment, I think that we have plenty of cash to just pay for this. So I'm not going to vote for it.
Thank you. Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, I just want to highlight that all the legislators received an email from Lori explaining the interest costs associated with the bonds that we, the estimated interest cost on the bonds that we're voting on tonight. One, I think we should try to incorporate that in some way into resolutions so we know what future costs we're committing, or have it in some sort of memo or report that clearly spells it out like it was followed up here. But just so everybody knows that this will cost an additional $301,875 estimated over 15 years if we bond this. I would much rather see the $7 million that we're going to park in fund balance later used to pay cash for these type of things so we can save the county money and not have to create an additional $300,000 of expense to the county. You know, the Cortlandt Street Bridge project over 20 years, that's estimated at $974,000. The Podunk Bridge, the interest on 20 years is $1.5 million. The midline culvert is $742,000 in interest cost. So we just committed a lot of cost to a lot of future legislatures to have to deal with. So I think it's important that we understand the true cost of the decisions that we're making. I support investing in our highway equipment, but I don't support investing in our highway equipment in this way, especially with the cash balances that we're currently carrying.
Thank you. Rich and then Mike.
Yeah, I just want to point out that there's a couple different reasons to bond this and to spread the cost over a course of years. One, you don't have substantial ups and downs when you have major capital spending if you're trying to pay it out of cash. But another reason is that you want to spread out the cost so that future taxpayers who receive all of the benefit from that equipment help pay for it. If you pay cash, it's all today's taxpayers that pay for everything, and future users don't contribute. I know we had the discussion earlier about who benefits and who doesn't benefit, but a principal reason we do a capital program is to properly allocate the expense where it belongs. And some of that belongs with future taxpayers. There is an interest element to doing that, but there always is. So I will support the resolution.
Thank you, Rich. Mike?
Rich said it better than I could.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mike Sigler?
Just a quick question again, 300,000. What kind of rate are we looking at on these? And I know it's there.
I didn't hear the question. What kind of what?
What kind of rate? I'm sorry. What kind of rate are we looking at?
Rate?
Yeah.
Or was
on
it
the bond?
Whatever
4% interest rate was what was in Lori's email?
Right. I think that's what they estimated, but, you know, we are 3-4 months out from issuance, so, well, at least 2 months out from issuance, so who knows what happens to the rate markets there. Also depends on our Moody's rating. There's a lot of variables.
I guess the reason I ask is because I don't know if the mindset has changed at all, just because, I mean, where we used to be able to get money not free, but at 1%, we're not getting that. I mean, even though we have a great rating. And it does kind of make sense then if we're not, I mean, I keep hearing that rates are going to go down. I mean, I met with a mortgage guy today who's saying, yes, rates in about, 6 months are they're predicting they go down. Whether they're right or not, I don't know. But so it would seem at this particular point in time, cash might be the way to go, as opposed to bonding something at a higher rate. I mean, I guess we could refinance later, but I don't know really why we would kind of go down that path if we have the cash to do it right now.
Deb Dawson.
The other thing I think we need to consider is $300,000 sounds like a lot of money, but divided over 15 years, it's $20,000 a year. The present value of $20,000 15 years out is diddly squat. Just a thought.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the resolution? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm 10. All those against, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 10-4, that passes.
And the last resolution, FF, authorizing acceptance of a New York State Department of Transportation grant funding for aircraft rescue, firefighting, snow removal equipment, and building Ithaca Tompkins International Airport. That's 12077, and I move it.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Susan Curry. Any questions or comments? Randy?
Yeah, the building of this facility is going to be very expensive, but this doesn't, although we're accepting this, it doesn't mean we're approving the actual project itself. We may decide not to do it depending on the ultimate cost. So.
Mike Lane?
I do want to point out, and as I said, Roxanne is here too, but we heard at the committee how hard our airport administration has been working to bring down the cost of this building. We were initially, and Roxanne, please interrupt me if I'm wrong, but we were initially $5 million in the hole. We've got a couple of grants and we're still working on that. Do you want to say anything, Roxanne?
That is correct. And this grant, by accepting it, we can push it out 5 years. But with some hard work from, Josh Nally and looking at the numbers and the type of building, we've been able to reduce the cost immensely, cutting it down to, and this is estimates, there's no definitive, we're still, not a ways out from the definitive numbers, but hoping to be about $400,000, $600,000 that wouldn't be covered by grants, by the FAA, by PFCs, all of that, and it could be less. We're working to get the eligible portions down so it saves the county and the airport, and that we can move ahead with a much-needed building.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Lee Shurtleff?
I think Roxanne and Mike covered it, and there's another aspect to that is that there's been a renegotiation with the FAA as to the master plan in order to make this happen, and they're amenable to it. Is that correct, Roxanne?
That is correct. So we have an airport capital improvement program with the FAA that we meet every year. And they've already, invested some funds into this as well as far as the study, the design portion of the grant. And, they've allowed us to push this back and are understandable with the financial situation of not only Ithaca Airport, but many regional airports across the United States. So they're amenable to working with us, to working with the county to try to get this at an affordable rate for everyone too.
Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, if you haven't had a chance to watch F&I when we talked about this is just a great example, and hats off to Josh and Roxanne for trying to really think creatively and understand that there's a need, understand that there's not the financial resources to support that need, and figuring out a way to really continue to move forward and dramatically reduce the local impact that this will have by looking at building type, construction materials, all sorts of things. So this was really well done. This should be when this is completed and done, and if it all works out as proposed, this should be a great case study to put side by side the original proposal, which what actually happens, and how when you really sit down and put pen to paper and think creatively, you can come up with a solution that works. And so I definitely support this and will continue to support this project as it moves forward.
I think the other part to know is that a portion of this is going to be paid by congressional directed spending. And if for some reason the budget is not passed, that spending is not going to be available. So hopefully that's worst case scenario, and that would be a bad place that we'd be in anyway if the budget wasn't passed, but that could be a possibility. Sorry to be a downer. on this holiday season.
My job.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Save the best for last. Okay, Resolution GG. Resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 05-04, Fund Balances, ID 12004.
Okay, seconded by Mike Lane.
I'm going to let other people talk.
Okay, Randy Brown.
So I want to make sure I understand this. So currently, the policy is 18% of anticipated revenues or the revenues from the prior year?
Actual, I thought.
Actual revenues from the prior year.
So then this one will be 25% of the actual expense for the prior year?
Correct.
Okay, I just make sure I understood.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, just to make sure we have the numbers in front of us. I think in Lori's email on November 13th, unless these numbers changed, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was sent to the rest of the legislature, that 25% of expenditures would be 45.3 million, and our current policy is 18% of revenue would be 37.4 million. So that's an increase of 8 million, 7.9 million. Just want to get that, is that correct?
Those are the numbers, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're comfortable using today's taxpayer dollars for future benefit, or should the burden of the operation of the county be put back on the taxpayer in the moment that's utilizing the services of the time? Because essentially what we're doing is we're taking tax money that we did not need, that we've, some may argue, over-collected, and parking it to feel like we've got a bigger safety net than 37 million, which is larger than we've ever had a safety net before, which was larger than the safety net that got us through COVID, to my understanding. So I don't see a reason to support this. I could see 18% of expenditures, but that would take that number down to 32 million, which I know my colleagues don't have an appetite for. I think this is a mistake. I think we're parking cash when we have a better use for it today, for the taxpayers that have paid that over the last several years, and we could really do some good with that rather than just having it sit there to feel good and have a larger net.
Thank you. Rich John, and then Deborah Dawson.
I support the resolution. Part of the reason I do so is that we want to maintain our bond rating where it is now, and 25% is consistent with what our rating agency is saying we should be doing. I do not want to see our bond rating jeopardized. I mean, we were talking earlier about interest payments that would directly impact interest payments. And yes, we have to, as you say, park some additional money, but we always maintain reserves. There is always money parked. It's just, we need to do this once. And when we get to that level, then we know we have sufficient reserves for pretty much any eventuality that we'd see, hopefully. But we would also satisfy our rating agency.
Thank you. Deborah Dawson, Randy Brown, and then I'm going to step in for a second.
Yeah, I just want to point out that our expenditures increase pretty steadily year over year after year. Over the last 4 or 5 years, they've gone up $25 million. And we're initiating new projects every year. And I think that means that we need to have more in reserve because the whole point of the reserve is if something unforeseen and catastrophic happens, we can continue to support the programs we've decided to provide to our residents. I'm not going to belabor this. I can close my eyes and visualize just exactly what every person in this room would say. And I am only one vote among 14, and I cede the ground of trying to convince my colleagues the wisdom of fiscal conservatism. So I've said my piece. Thank you.
Okay, I have Randy Brown.
Thanks, Deborah. I think that, this past year, we looked really hard at our finances, and I've mentioned this before. I feel that the county is in very strong financial condition, and that's for the people who are here well before me. This all happened. And so looking at this, I'm on the fence about this, so I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I like the expense side. It should be against expense. I agree completely with that. I don't like the revenue thing. But even at $45 million, that still leaves us a very large amount of money that's no longer, that is in question, $27 million or whatever that number is. Because it's 72 million versus 45, so that's a lot of cash. So my question is, if we do this and we decide later on that we want to take 5 million out of it or 10 million out of it for a building, whatever building it may be, can we still do that? Is there just a vote that has to happen, or is we'd have to change the policy? I'm not sure how that works.
If we wanted to take it out of the reserve?
Of this 25% reserve policy that we may establish, so now it's at 45 million, that will change obviously over time. But if we decided at a later date, the purpose of the reserve is to use it when we need to use it, right? So the question is, does it come down to a vote of need? So if we say, we're going to take $10 million of this out of that fund, and we're going to use it to build the Center for Government building, is that legally something we can do, or is it a matter of a vote or a change of policy? Or I'm trying to understand, what is the access to this money?
Yeah, first of all, this is the non-reserve fund balance. This is your target fund balance. And then within the fund balance policy, if we go below that target, there's recommendations of how to get back to that target. So there are possibilities of going above or below, and in that, it is addressed.
So I understand that. So my next question is, so let's say we agree to this policy, and it's $45 million, right? So that means that $45 million is probably most likely not going to be touched unless it's something extraordinary, right?
Yeah. No. We swing $40 million throughout the year. Lori did report a budget capital personnel. The low balance of cash was $118 million. Right. The high was $156 million. So as you spend down your fund balance to this 25%, if you decide to spend it on various projects throughout the year, and as Deborah mentioned, our budget is growing, our projects are growing, we swing $40 million and we use this unallocated fund balance to pay the bills.
But this policy says you're not going to go below this 25%.
Correct. So we need that in. That's at a point in time measurement that's done after the whole year is completed, books are closed. It does not account for every day. There's some days.
I understand. I went to that meeting and I saw the ebbs and flows of the cash.
Yep.
So I did see that.
Okay, so I'm going to pipe in here for a second, and then we have Mike Lane, Greg, and Deborah. I just got back from the NYSEC board meeting, and there was an economist there who presented for us, and he owns his own business. Every year he gives 2024 outlooks. And the sheet of paper that he gave us, number one, every dollar has a value, and these are 2024 outlooks, every dollar has a value of $1.05 in the marketplace and should be considered a strong revenue generating asset throughout the year. And yes, short-term interest rates will remain above the range throughout 2024. It should be noted that 2024 will enable one to take advantage of time horizon on all cash and start laddering out matures of cash to protect and preserve your income on all cash for future years. The next part says, Rating agencies will be very diligent in their reviews and will reward those public and higher ed entities that have instilled strong liquidity management practices. And then the last part, he said 2 absolute guarantees I can assure you will occur in 2024. Second one, cash will remain king and be a revenue-generating asset that can offset any of the pressures I have listed above. Proactive management of your cash will help offset budget and price pressures and lead to balancing budgets or offsetting unexpected costs. So it doesn't get much clearer for me. I'll forward this to everyone. It gives a list of 10 points and how to be smart in the upcoming year. And then, of course, the last part was next year will be the most unpredictable year of modern times. So it is what it is. But this guy, seems to know his stuff, and he does come to NISEC every year and gives predictions, and I found him to be very reliable. So I will support this. Let's see here. Mike Lane, Greg, and Deborah.
I'll pass.
Okay. Greg?
Thanks, that's interesting. Just to clarify, though, if we don't move forward with this, we still have the benefit of short-term interest because that money is still in the general fund. It's just not tied to the resolution. So we don't lose the benefit of cash in the fund. We just lose what some may call a benefit of tying it or handcuffing it to this policy. The other thing I just wanted to hit on too, which isn't discussed in this, but we passed a reserve policy because Moody's was going to look favorably if we had money allocated and we had things set aside, and then we came back that Moody's really just wants unrestricted funds, and we passed a restricted reserve policy, and that's about $11.5 million based on our policy that we passed, which we'll probably see a resolution sometime in the first of the year for. So we're going to have $45 million plus $11.5 million, so we're going to have 56 and change million set aside. Reserve funds can only be used for those purposes. These funds can be used for really any purpose, but then have to be refilled. I don't see the compelling case to change the policy. I could see the compelling case to change the policy to 20% of expenditures, but to increase it so dramatically, right? The change should be that we're looking at expenditures, not revenue. The percentage should be lower, and we should be more in line with our 37 million. Because the info I received when I sat here from the Moody's person, I didn't see a 25% or $45 million number as some magic bullet that would guarantee or ensure a bond rating. It's just something we've sort of arrived at. Plus, we have this 11.5 million in reserve, which they said they also factor in as a consideration, but don't officially factor in. So I just think we're just putting too much money on the shelf for a rainy day that may never come when it's raining right now and we have real needs for it. I'm not saying spend it to zero. I think we should be fiscally conservative, but I also think we should be realistic that we don't need this $60 million war chest.
Okay, Deborah?
Yeah, my recollection of the documentation that we got in BCP from Moody's was that the average fund balance reserve that their AA rated municipalities had was in the neighborhood of 41%. So that's one piece of this. And the other piece of this is, somebody mentioned how appreciative they were of the fact that when they came on the legislature, Tompkins County was in such good fiscal condition. And I appreciated that as well. And that is because of the policies and the care with which previous legislatures managed our money. And I want to do that favor for future legislatures. I would really like to keep us in as good fiscal condition or in better fiscal condition than it was in when we found it. I also would point out that $45 million sitting in various accounts at even 4% generates $1.8 million a year. And yes, I know it would generate that whether it was in a formal reserve or not. But I think having a reserve policy protects the county going forward from irrational exuberance on the part of future legislatures. And I think that's important.
Mike Lane.
Just wanted to point out that this was the recommendation of our Director of Finance at 25%. Actually, in the past, we had talked about 22% or some kind of a range. But after her discussions with financial advisors and I think Moody's, she came to this conclusion.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and vote for the resolution. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm 9. Those against, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 9 to 5, that passes. Anything else, Amanda? Boy, who knew you'd get the winning resolution tonight? Okay, are there any individual member filed resolutions? Okay, can I get a mover for the minutes of our previous meeting, December 5th, 2023? Moved by Veronica Pillars, seconded by Travis Brooks. Any questions, comments, changes? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. We've taken care of the unfinished business. Now it's time to go into executive session. We have 5 topics for the reasons of discussions regarding proposed, pending, or current litigation, collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and 2 matters regarding the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Rich Johns, seconded by Mike Lane. And all those in favor to go into executive session, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you all. It is 8:27. Why don't we come back at 8:45?